Good girls like bad boys. A Tikki and Plagg fairy alternate universe. Miraculous Ladybug Fanfiction, Part 6. Tikki! Tikki! Oh my goodness, Tikki! Pollen shrieked as she ran into the hospital room her best friend resided in. Pollen? Tikki asked weakly. Pollen grasped and took Tikki's hand. Are you okay? What happened? Tikki didn't answer. What's going on? Tikki panicked. She looked around, only seeing the clean white room and lots of machines. What happened to me? Tikki asked. Pollen squeezed her hand. I was hoping you could tell me, she said softly. Pollen sniffled, tears starting to flow down her face. No one knows what happened. Oh, I can't believe I let you get hurt. I'm a terrible best friend. Pollen gripped Tikki's hand even tighter. Should have never let you keep teaching him. I knew better than that. Oh, I'm so sorry. Tikki looked at her friend in shock. What? No, this isn't your fault. You did nothing wrong, Tikki said. Her eyebrows knitted together in worry. How could Pollen blame herself? Hello. Nice to see you up and awake. Tikki looked at the doctor who had walked in and spoken. She nodded her head, not sure how she was feeling. The doctor began to talk to her parents. Her mom was in tears. Luckily, you only passed out. No injuries to your head or body. The doctor spoke to her again. Tikki nodded again and looked back at Pollen, who wiped her eyes. You're the first one awake. Dusu is still down and Plagg, we can't find him. Pollen gritted her teeth at the end. Plagg? He's missing? Tikki said worriedly. The blonde blinked. He didn't do this to you? She asked after a few beats. Tikki's mouth dropped. What? Why would he knock me out? Pollen looked all around the room before meeting Tikki's eyes again. He said he was bad, Pollen murmured to herself. Well, since he's gone, I kind of assumed he did something, she offered up to Tikki. The red-haired fairy shook her head. No way he did this! Can you remember what happened? Tikki bit her lip and pulled her fist up to her chin to rest on. I remember arguing with Dusu, and then she slapped me. Tikki felt her cheeks heat up and nostrils flare, feeling the familiar anger that at the annoying blue-winged fairy. That witch hit you? Pollen cried out. Luckily, no one else was in the room at the time. The doctors and her parents had stepped out into the hall. Well, yeah, we were fighting and she was being so stupid. She said I was the one being rude and over-dramatizing everything. And I yelled back at her, of course, and then she slapped me, Tikki said, her fist tightening. Pollen's eyes became sharper and she growled. Ugh. She's ridiculous. So ridiculous, Pollen snarled. Tikki nodded her head in agreement. And then I was gonna shout back, but Plagg yelled at us to stop and slammed his hands on the table, and that's when Plagg... Tikki's voice trailed off to a stop, and her eyes became wide. She sharply inhaled and her mouth dropped. Tikki? Pollen asked worriedly. Tikki, talk to me. Don't give me that look, Pollen demanded. Tikki continued to look blankly out the window. I think he's in trouble, she said softly. Pollen cocked her head to one side. What? Who? She asked. Tikki didn't answer. She didn't even speak as her parents and doctor came back into the room. She's so annoying! I'm glad she's out, Tikki grumbled as she walked around her room. Pollen sat on her desk chair with a very worried look on her face. I know, but who's in trouble? I know you'll take care of it, so don't even try and use that as an answer, Pollen said, aspirated. I say it's Dusu's fault, Tikki said. She went right back to being mad. Pollen sighed. Yeah, I think she's a factor, but honestly, the street goes both ways, and Tikki, you've been so irritable this year, with all the classes and stress, Pollen said. Tikki glared at her friend, but the yellow-winged fairy didn't waver her even gaze. Believe it or not, you make mistakes too, and that's fine, but you have got to own up to it. Especially since you can't just be mad at Dusu when you can't remember half the things that happened and Plagg is still missing, Pollen lectured. Tikki pulled a sour face. I know I make mistakes. You can stop saying that like I don't acknowledge them. I do. I'm a fairy, not an immortal being, she huffed. Pollen crossed her arms. Then, what did you do wrong? She challenged. Tikki gave her another stink eye, but Pollen only cocked an eyebrow up. Well, Tikki trailed off. She racked her brain. Was it this hard for everyone else to talk about the things they did wrong? I should have been teaching Plagg the whole time, the redhead settled on. Pollen rolled her eyes. Yeah, a real mistake you made. Something that you did to make the situation worse? I know Dusu didn't do it all. Believe it or not, she can be reasonable, and you can be over-defensive. Give me 3 things that you did wrong, and they better not be baby reasons, Pollen said firmly. Tikki sputtered. Pollen pulled a triumphant expression. A smirk appeared across her features. Yeah, that's what I thought, Pollen said icily. I just can't think of 3 things, Tikki argued. Oh, really? Can you think of 1? Pollen said sarcastically. Tikki stayed silent, her eyes drilling down into the floor. Her shoulders were hunched over, and her feet stayed still. No, you clearly can't, and that's quite telling, Pollen scolded. You're my best friend, and that's why I'm telling you this. You refuse to admit you even did something wrong. You were too stubborn at times, and I love that about you. I love that you hold your ground, but sometimes you have to let it go. This has bothered other people, but no one else is allowed to tell you off but me. I love you. You're basically my sister, and that's why I'm yelling at you. Tikki, you are taking too many classes, and it's making you stressed, senseless, and irritable. You have to drop one of them, at the very least, for the sake of your own sanity, and quite frankly, mine. You are sassy. That's great. You don't let anyone mess with you or the people you care about, but sometimes you take it too far and yell at people when they really didn't need to be screamed at. You're so acutely aware of the flaws of the people you don't like around you. So tell me, Tikki, why do you forget about your own? Pollen breathed heavily when she finished talking. Tikki was still glued in place in the middle of the room. Pollen's arms were tightly crossed at her chest, and her feet were tapping quietly. They stayed in their spot, no movement from each fairy. Pollen just silently waited. You're right, Tikki said quietly. I had a part in this whole mess. I baited Dusu. She just reacted to me. She was right. I am rude and stuck up. Tears began to form at the sides of her eyes. Pollen stood up and wrapped her arms around Tikki. That's okay. We'll work on it, just like how we worked through my jumping to conclusions problem, she said gently. wiping a tear that was running down Tikki's cheek. We're going to figure it out together and solve it. You're not alone in this. Pollen comforted her friend. Tikki stiffened and melted into the floor. Thank you, she said weakly. Pollen hugged her even tighter. Of course. Suddenly, Tikki's eyes opened and her entire body jerked away. What? Tikki, are you okay? Or is brain damage actually on the table? Pollen cried out. Tikki shook her head, waving off her concern. Plagg! I need to find Plagg! Tikki said urgently. Pollen shook her head, reaching for her friend again. He's missing. We don't know where Plagg is, Pollen said. The red-headed fairy shook her head and opened her window to climb out and fly away. Pollen's eyes went big in fear. Tikki, oh my god, no, she shrieked. I know where he is, Tikki said. No, Tikki, wait. Pollen was cut off by a flying red blur out the window and to wherever. Oh god. That girl should join track. Plagg, you better be there, you idiot! Tikki zoomed across the city, nervous as to who she'd find, or lack of who she'd find. She spotted the large tree with an old clubhouse and prayed she'd find the rascal there. This is what he described, at least. She floated down on the small porch and opened the door, shouting, Plagg! I have a headache. Don't scream. Tikki let out a sigh of relief and ran up to hug the black-haired fairy tightly. Whoa! He shouted. But she didn't let go. Oh my god, Plagg! Did you have to run away? No one could find you! She cried out. Plagg snarled. They wouldn't want to find me anyways, he said darkly. Tikki scowled. Yes, we do! Thank goodness you told me about this tree. A while back, Plagg was trying to get out of, actually learning. So he had told Tikki about his favorite hideout, a tree on the older side of town. It was in the forest, but you could see it from a mile away because it was the only huge oak in the mess of pine and evergreen. It had a run-down clubhouse that was, although old, still sturdy. I really wish that I didn't write about now. Tikki growled. Shut up! Why'd you run away? She released him from her grasp, but still stood pretty close to him to grab his arm if he tried to run away. Again. For safety reasons, he snapped. She raised an eyebrow. Safety reasons? You ran away from the hospital because it wasn't safe, she said sarcastically. Plagg glowered at her. Not for me, for everyone else, he scoffed. Tikki crinkled her eyebrows together. Her eyes turned down and her fingers laced together. Why? She asked. Plagg glared at her, clearly not wanting to give up the answer. Well, answer, she demanded. Plagg kept his mouth shut. Why'd you leave? She said again, still being met with silence. Plagg, because I destroy everything, he shouted. Tikki jumped. I ruin everything, Plagg choked out. He seemed to be holding back tears, and Tikki reached out to him, but he swatted her hands away. No, I can't hurt you, he cried out. I can't do anything good. All I leave is destruction and misery in my wake. Plagg normally had a very unique voice. It was loud and commanding. It made every joke 8 times funnier. Everyone knew his voice, and when he spoke, everyone listened. It was powerful, but now it was weak, defeated, beaten, broken. Everything's my fault. It's always my fault. Tikki shook her head. No, Plagg, it was me and Dusu. You tried to help. Don't think that... You don't get it! He yelled out, making Tikki stop again. I'm evil. I'm the worst thing that this world has ever seen. I'm destruction and solely that. Plagg pushed Tikki away. Go. You have to be safe. Stay safe. Stay away from me, he mumbled. Tikki scoffed and laughed. Are you crazy? No, are you crazy? I am perfectly safe around you. You're not a big bad guy. Tikki took a defiant step forward. Go! He shoved her again, but Tikki held her ground. Literally, she didn't even budge. You think you can get rid of me that easily, don't you? I don't think you know who you're talking to, she said, determined as heck. I do know who I'm talking to. You need to leave, Plagg retorted. Tikki cocked an eyebrow. So, I have been informed that I can be a bit aggressive when yelling at people, but let me tell you, this time it is perfectly reasonable. You are not evil. I don't know what the heck got that into your thick skull, but you're not. Now stop trying to make me go away. Well, I've also been told that I'm way too stubborn sometimes, but right now, I don't care how annoying it is. I'm staying right here, and there's nothing you can do about it. No matter how you claim yourself to be, literally, you have no grounds to stay on. Tikki snapped back. Plagg groaned and rubbed his eyes. You know what? You want to know? You really want to know? Plagg yelled. His voice was thick with anger, ice, and aggression. Do tell, Tikki baited him. Fine. I'm evil because everything I touch dies. It's always destroyed. There's a reason I moved schools, and guess what I did? I blew up an entire school. So nice and non-evil, isn't that? Oh, and today, yesterday, I destroyed a classroom and knocked 2 other fairies out. Definitely not something a bad guy would do. Search out my old school. I dare you. Go there. I dare you. It's gone, all gone. I turned it into dust and now it's gone. My first house? Guess what happened? Me. I happened. It's gone. All that's left is black and dust. The hospital I was born at. Hasta la vista. Echo bye-bye. And guess who did that? So, just try and tell me that I'm not completely and utterly evil. Tikki was silent as Plagg exhaled. That's what I thought, he said grimly. You're not evil, Tikki reassured him. Plagg gave her a hardened glare. Without lying, I'm not. Her rebuttal was instant. Tikki put a hand on her hip and pursed her lips to his side. I blew up a building. More than once, actually. I'd love to see how you argue that, Plagg said with a sharp, humorless laugh. Tikki rolled her eyes. Did you mean to do it? What? Answer the question. Did you mean to blow it up? No. Did you want to destroy it? Also no. In any way, shape, or form, did you have a choice to destroy something and choose to? She was only met with silence. Tikki grinned triumphantly. You're not evil. You never meant for anything to happen. It was an accident. That's okay, she said gently, reaching out to grab his hand. This time, Plagg didn't shake her away. Now come on. We need to get back and talk to the doctors and make sure you're okay. And Pollen is totally gonna kill me, Tikki laughed. Plagg cracked a small smile, with his sharp canines showing. They flew out, hand in hand and laughing. This story was coming towards its end, but their love story was just starting.